Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And I am the diet culture vampire. I have risen from my place of rest because I heard a bad take about weight loss and it was pissing me off. And I didn't even hear the whole thing. I just heard the beginning and it was enough. So I was like, you know what? The diet culture vampire is rising up. It's well past sundown. I'm ready to go. Let's talk.
Weight, they often attempt to cope. When people lose a lot of weight, they often attempt to cope with the discipline that it takes to lose a lot of weight by developing a big ego. This inflated ego isn't.
So, I already have an issue with this. I'm going to cut her off like 20,000 times. So that needs to be stated. Here's my question, ma'am. What exactly is wrong with having an ego? What is wrong with that? What is wrong with having your own personal goals? What is wrong with having your own personal life path? Or something that you're working towards in your life? What is wrong with being an individual? What is wrong with having individual wants? Not even needs. Let's talk wants. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with advocating for yourself? What's wrong with doing what you want to do? Even if it is from an egoic place, what exactly is wrong with that? So already that was making me mad.
Just coming from the confidence that weight loss inspires, but it's also, again, coming from a place of people needing to cope with the symptoms that come with being disciplined.
So, is it more of a cope that somebody is disciplined? Or is it more of a cope when somebody is not happy at all with how they look, i.e. somebody who's very fat? What would actually be coping? Is somebody coping when they're satisfied with progress they've made? Is somebody coping when things are going well? I told you guys pretty much from the start of this era, I wanted to get here from an activistic place. I wanted to show that it was possible to go from being very big to being thin, aka average. I made it to average in July. I was super pleased, super satisfied. It made me so happy. I was so relieved to not be mid-sized anymore. I hated it personally. I absolutely hated it. I had one of the worst mid-size eras ever, which it was just crazy. But the point is, yeah, I felt a lot more confident getting out of that phase. I felt a lot happier getting out of that phase, and I felt hella accomplished. I had done something activistically that I had worked to for years to accomplish. Of course, I'm going to have an ego about it. And of course, if somebody else does something that they're proud of, they're going to have a bit of an ego about it. Why wouldn't you? It's a big accomplishment. One of my best friends is working towards a PhD. If she has an ego about having a PhD, I know how much work went into that. The blood, sweat, and tears. How much of her life has been devoted to that. I mean, it's wild. It's wild. Okay, sorry. Something came up. I was a little interrupted there. But regardless, if she has confidence over that, if she has an ego over that, that's okay. What you don't want to have is you don't want to have an overinflated ego. Okay, that's where we can have an issue. Overinflated, why is that a problem? Because it's not real. If I got on here and I told you guys that I was super snatched or I looked incredibly amazing to everybody or whatever, or I was incredibly fit, that would be an inflated ego. But to say that I'm average, that is not an inflated ego. And from where I've come from, that is a massive accomplishment, and it will create an egoic boost, which there is nothing wrong with, period. There's nothing inherently wrong with that at all. Oftentimes when people say this to you, When people talk about ego being a bad thing, it's because they want to have the ego and they don't want you to. And that is where it gets narcissistic. That's a narcissistic thing. Not okay.
Discipline is a very good thing most of the time. As someone who has
Most of the time, it's a good thing.
struggled with addiction, I know that discipline is a good thing, but it can also give you a superiority complex. It can also make you assume that problems
And do you not have one yourself? Because it seems like it from the couple of takes I've heard.
you have faced in the past will never be faced again. You've conquered them all because you're so amazing. I think former fat people need to be very careful about the way that they talk about themselves because
Why would we need to be any more careful than anybody else? Please explain that. And you don't think a fat activist should have to be careful about how they talk about themselves? Why? Why is that?
that fatness that you fear, that version
I don't fear it. It's called reality, and I know exactly how it happened, where it came from, how it ended. You know? I'm still a Swiftie, even as a vampire, and she has a song called How Did It End? And I used to sing it about obesity, which is really extra and kind of lame, but I don't care because I thought it was funny. And literally, it's like somebody can ask, how did it end? I can tell you. I know how it ended. The only time people fear fatness is when there's a mystery about it or where there's this mysticism. When you're living in reality, it's not scary at all. You know exactly where it comes from. You know exactly how it happened. Only people that are in the toxic ritualistic are people who are not real in the real life. They're not in reality. They have a mental illness. Only those people will fear fatness or fear becoming fat, because you're not going to fear becoming fat if you know how it happened. You have to be somewhat delusional, which there are plenty of people who are, and those are the people that are going to fear it. I don't fear it. Look at this vanity. Look at how horrible my ego is. I don't fear it. Why would I? I'm extremely confident in that.
of yourself that you enjoy demonizing to get a
I
laugh.
never demonize anything about my past. I just don't glorify it either. I just see it as it is. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's not, I think people need to, I understand that people, they derive meaning from a weight loss journey. I totally get that. I absolutely do. But typically the meaning, it comes from deeper things. It comes from, I learned to set boundaries in my life. I learned to raise my own standards, especially if we're talking from a vanity standpoint, which I feel like she is mostly attacking. She's mostly attacking the diet culture vampires of it all, the diet culture vampirism of it all. When people find meaning in a vanity weight journey, it's usually because I'm raising the standards for myself. And it tends to be, I'm raising the standards for my life. Whitney, I've been watching Whitney. She talks about that, and I loved the way she talked about that. I think that that was super motivating. I think it makes sense. You know, this journey, it's much more philosophical than going for health, which there's nothing wrong with that, just as there's absolutely nothing wrong with trying to get health. You know, in fact, I would activistically enforce that, and I think that that is an expectation for you to not be overweight. Full stop. A vanity weight journey is not exactly an expectation, though. It's different. It's much more individualized, and it's about what a person wants, and it's your own standards for yourself. But there's a lot of meaning in that. And oftentimes it can be a stepping stone to further progress. I have done a lot of internal work during this vanity weight era. I have been reckoning with my avoidant attachment style, and I feel like I'm done. It's dying. It's basically dead. I'm not playing along with it anymore. And I was only able to do that work to face it, and honestly face it on some quite tearful nights, because I was in this state, because I was in that deep deficit, and I was working so hard on vanity because it triggered why I had an issue with vanity, which was my avoidance. It was a direct connection. And oftentimes, there are connections to vanity. For some other people, it can be, well, I don't want to feel like I'm being overly competitive, or maybe they have ego issues, or maybe there are other issues that this journey will bring to the surface. And that can be very therapeutic and very enlightening and very spiritual. It can be very deep, even within being superficial. Sometimes things are both. Like I said, what is wrong with having an ego? You don't want an overinflated one. That's bad. You don't want to feel like you're hardworking if you're lazy. That's bad. You want to stay realistic, but there's nothing wrong with advocating for yourself and your goals as an individual. Having an ego at its core just means being an individual, which there's nothing wrong with. And again, we can be an individual and we can also be a part of a collective at the same time. We don't have to choose that. But that's a whole other discussion that we'll get into if it's necessary.
Out of others or even yourself, you haven't actually made that much distance between you and that previous version of yourself. To assume that you'll never be fat again is foolish. To assume
it's not an assumption, it's a fact. If you know what you're doing, then it's not going to happen. The amount that I would have to overeat to go back to where I started, it would take years. It would take months and months and months of hinging to get to that size. When I am doing this in a way where I am controlling my appetite, I've told you guys on the channel a lot. At this point, I'm really, really fostering my internal serotonin, the serotonin in my brain, so specifically central nervous system serotonin. How? By slowly increasing caloric intake over a long period of time and allowing that process to happen, even if it makes you feel depressed, or even if you feel weird, or you have weird nightmares and stuff, which I've been having. I allow it to happen and I foster it and I encourage it because it is the appetite control. And once you adjust to that higher level of brain serotonin, you normalize and it's not a big deal. Because that's the whole reason why your body is trying to work it, because your body doesn't want to be huge. And she's operating on an assumption that it wants to be. It doesn't. You have to manipulate your body to be in that state, or you have to refuse to get hormonal things done, or you have to refuse to exercise, which that's a huge thing that I have talked about on this channel the entire journey. Exercise is very, very important for longevity. It's very important for the brain. It changes your glucose metabolism. It changes everything. It is not just about the calories at all, not even close. But I've already been working out for years. So to undo all of that, it's almost impossible, especially because I'm not delusional enough to believe in hinge E followed by the letter D. I'm not delusional enough to be toxically ritualistic anymore. I woke up. I can't fall back to sleep. You think I can believe in Pennywise again when I already bullied him and then stomped him out like at the end of the second movie? No. It's not going to happen. Pennywise is dead. Pennywise might try to come back. There might be a red balloon every now and then, but it's very easy to pop it. It's not hard because it's not scary at all to me. And you can get there. You guys absolutely can get there. It can take a long time though. But I've been doing this for a long time. I have hella confidence. I didn't lose all the weight in 1 year. I've lost it over years. If I can't be confident about it, then who can? And I'm not going to sit here and lie for your comfortability and act like I'm not confident about it. I absolutely am. I know I'm not going back. And that needs to be normalized too. People need to start saying, yeah, I'm not going back. I know I'm not. Because that also improves a collective confidence. Part of why there is no confidence is everybody acts like you can gain back 300 pounds like nothing. I was never that big, but they act like I can regain 170 pounds like nothing. That is not going to happen. I'm sorry, but no.
That you'll never face another weight related issue is foolish and again a result
That's a weird criterion. What do you mean by weight related issue? What does that even mean?
of that ego. The way I used to talk about Fat Chloe, man, you would have sworn that she worked at Lockheed Martin and she had an internship with TMZ. And on the weekends, I was protesting outside of Planned Parenthood. I was making myself out to be this fictional fat character that never existed. I was describing myself as this gluttonous, terrible freakazoid because I thought that if I spoke poorly on myself, if I demonized the previous version of myself, that I would make distance between me and her, and then I would never become her again, and then I still did.
Okay, well, I don't know what the hell this is. I have a feeling she does not want other people to succeed. Again, there's a little bit of narc energy going on with this one. I felt it. I'm not trying to diagnose, but there's definitely, I think there's some traits. Because if you've gone through the process, typically a normal human being that has gone through the process would want nothing more than for other people to go through it, because it doesn't actually fucking matter to us. Like in terms of a competition, it's not a competition. That's a toxic ritualistic thing. That's something that people think when they're in the fat herd. When you're in the fatness thing, you think that other people want you to stay there. That's not true. I don't have to compete with a fat person. I don't. You know, I'm not a mid-sized princess anymore. Even when I was mid-sized princess, I wasn't really competing about that as much. I was a little bit though. But it was more so because I was insecure with my social standing, because it was ambivalent and it was incredibly difficult to have people. It was ambiguous. It was hard for me personally. I just personally can't stand that ambiguity. I like to be able to stand and be like, boom, this is me. But that's a personality thing. I'm a fixed person. If you want to be even gayer, in astrology, I have a lot of Leo, Scorp, and Aquarius. I have those three fixed signs. Those are the majority of my chart, which just are like the big ones, especially the personal ones. And that just means, like, for those of you who don't know what that means, it just means that I'm very stubborn. I'm not the type to conform to my environment. My environment conforms to me because I'm a fixed person. I don't change. I'm very, very resistant to change. It just is what it is, and I own it, and whatever. There's good and bad. You know, I'm not adaptable at all. I could live in another country for 20 years and I would still have this accent, I guarantee you, because I don't change. And that's, you know, whatever. That's just a personality thing. But I'm just saying, like, that's why I couldn't stand the mutability of that, the ambiguity of it. It was very uncomfortable for me. So I was a little bit competitive because I was insecure. But today, no. I'm never going to go through another huge social status shift. You know, maybe there is a looks-based thing. Maybe I will look better in the future than I do now, but it's not the same thing as going from hugely fat to mid-size or from mid-size to average. It's not the same socially. It's a lot. And I think people don't understand how drastic those changes can feel to a person, especially coming from such a huge size, because a lot of that stuff isn't even social. It's incredibly physical. So we're talking like I can fit on a plane and I couldn't before. We're talking I can fit in a theater seat. I couldn't. We're talking I can walk these many miles. I couldn't before. I can sleep in my bed without worrying about anything. With I can breathe when I sleep when I couldn't before. Like, how many things and how many ways I was limited by being so huge. Again, because of my behaviors, which that's just reality. It's incredibly different. And if I were to get snatched, even if I were to have abs or something, it's not going to be that different. I'm not going to have a complete lifestyle change. I'm not going to have such a drastic social status shift. It's not the same thing, because you can look good or bad on any day. You know, it's just, that's the truth of it. which again, people don't like that because it makes beauty feel too fleeting. But the fact is, as handsome or as beautiful as you are, if you dress like crap, if you have like a big bruise on your face or something, or you get swollen because you get stung by a bee or something, you're going to lose it. You won't have it for a while. It's like we have to have something besides just our looks. We just do. Because it's not that stable. It's just not. And of course, time comes for us all if we're lucky to live that long. So again, you need to like keep perspective on certain things. But when it comes to fatness, it's a lot bigger of a shift than just a glow up. It just is. That's all anybody ever talks about. But I mean, there are ways in which you are affected when you're completely alone. Being super huge versus average. It is just drastically different. And that can be scary to people. But trust me, if I, as a super fixed person that is very resistant to change, if I can change, then so can you. And if someone like me can change, someone who is deeply toxically ritualistic to the point of almost dying because I was that resistant to change, then basically anybody can do it. That's just the truth. It is.
Did. And the person I'm describing, the habits I'm criticizing, I'm describing a version of myself that I have experienced many times in my life, and I'm criticizing behaviors that I myself have taken part in many times in my life, right? So this is not coming from a place of like, I'm on my high horse and I'm better than you because I've lost weight and I'm normal about it. I was never normal about it. That's the issue. I was never normal about it, fam. Sometimes
just because you weren't doesn't mean that nobody else is, though. Like, you can sit here and talk about yourself. That's fine. If you wanted to start the video that way, then you can start the video that way. I can talk about where I was insecure. I was my most insecure probably when I was mid-sized. And I told you guys why. Other than that, I mean, that doesn't mean everybody that's mid-sized felt the way that I felt. I just talked about it in terms of this could happen. I called it a mid-sized princess crisis, which I gave risk factors of how it could happen. And they were like long haul weight loss, so losing like 80 plus pounds for a woman or 100 plus pounds for a man to get to mid-size. Deep hormonal issues and recovery. So deep hormonal problems could lead to that, as well as a toxic ritualistic past or present. If you are still in it and you are mid-size, oh honey, the state of being mid-size is triggering in and of itself. If you are in the TR. But I broke that all down. That isn't everybody. Not everybody's that way. There's a lot of people that don't have any of those. And I was clear about that. So it's like, you can sit here and talk about yourself. That's fine. If you were, quote unquote, not normal about it, whatever normal is, I mean, I think what we need to normalize is being confident about losing weight and being like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not going back. I think that's what we need to normalize if we're going to talk normal.
sometimes
Which you hardly ever hear that. Oftentimes you hear, like, I'm always going to struggle with this. I don't know. It's never going to be the same. I'm never going to be, like, you hear a lot of MSP BS a lot of times online. Then when you get out in the real world and people have lost weight and they've lost the weight for like 10 years or something, most of them, they're just whatever. They don't care. A lot of people don't even tell you they've lost weight. So it's like, you don't really even know who has. Because not everybody is like me and is a freaking activist over it. And I knew I was going to be an activist. I had to figure out my cause, and I found it, and I love it. I absolutely love this cause. But it's like, I just have that personality, and I felt the calling to this work, to this line of work, which is crazy. And the way that I was when I was like 21, I never really saw this coming because I was so freaking shy when I was 21. I could barely even talk. But somehow here I am. I'm not shutting up. So I don't know. But again, we live and grow, etc. I worked at that too. That was probably one of the first major transformations I did was working on my deathly shy qualities, which I still am shy. That is something I will always struggle with because I'll always be introverted. That cannot change. But I mean, working at that, I think it was a precursor to eventually getting out of the toxic ritualistic because it was that difficult for me. So I'm just saying, everything happens for a reason. It does.
Come across videos where people are like, things I used to do when I was fat. And I can spot someone who's on like round one of weight loss like a hawk. Like there's a certain ego that comes when someone has just lost weight and this is the first time they've lost weight. And so these videos, they'll be like, I was such a big fat fatty. I was a fat.
Round one. Wow. Not everybody is in the TR. So you need to stop projecting your BS onto every single person. It's not that common. It really isn't. It is common enough that it's a huge problem, especially if we're talking within supermorbid obesity, which again is not that common. Even though you know, if you believe TikTok, you'd think 70% of the world is supermorbidly obese. That's not true. I think it's around 9%. Might have gotten worse, might be 10 in America, which is terrible. By the way, that's a disaster. But that still means 9 out of 10 people were never SMO, which how many of those people were toxically ritualistic that were never SMO? There's probably a lot that weren't, especially if you're getting the class 1. You can very easily become passively obese, especially class 1, which again, they don't ever take into account different categories, which is important when we talk about this issue activistically, because people need to know what you're talking about. You can't lump everything into one thing. So when I hear somebody who's on round 1 of weight loss, I hear somebody who was basically average and they got abs. They may never regain. They probably didn't have a toxic issue. They might have just lost 30 pounds and got abs and they're like, okay, whatever. When I was fat and they weren't even fat. They just weren't snatched. They were average. They didn't want to be average. Okay. You know, but people call things different things. And I think honestly incorrectly, like I do think we need a term. We need average to exist. Just like I do think we need mid-size as well, because these things do exist socially. They are social categories and they do matter. And being average, quite frankly, it means that you're not overweight. But not everybody who's overweight has six-pack and, you know, is super buff or super snatched or whatever. There are people that are skinny fat that are not overweight. There are people who just flat out don't look good. There are people who are underweight that are not overweight. You know, there are people that have trash body comp that are not overweight. Like, we need average to exist too. It does exist. But being super in shape, that's being like athletic, which sure, but that's like a different category. It's kind of different. Being thin is not the same for everybody. Of course, thin does, if a fat person says thin, they mean anybody who's not overweight, anybody who's underweight, who is fit or athletic. Someone who is skinny fat would be considered thin, and someone who is maybe kind of thick would be considered thin. That's a whole lot of different people. And so you don't necessarily know how somebody got to average, or if they got to super in shape. They probably didn't start from a huge place. That's kind of rare. It's rare to even be in superb shape. It is literally superb. It is above average. It is athletic. Most people are not athletic. So most people would start from an average place, which means that they weren't even, by my definition at least, they weren't even fat. I think fatness, it has to be more than skin deep. You have to have some kind of inconvenience or a physical barrier caused by your fatness, even if it's something like not being able to walk up a flight of stairs without being out of breath. That's still fatness to me. You can't walk up a hill. You struggle to hike. Okay. If it's just about how you look, in my opinion, that's mid-size. Because if your only freaking concern is how you look, then you're probably what I would call mid. Because it means that you're not overweight enough to actually have a real issue. Sorry, I know that sounds kind of bitchy and condescending, but as somebody who's been smo, that's the view I have of it. And as far as average, it's like, honey, you never had the social stigma of being mid-sized. You never had people being all weird towards you. You just blended in all along. If you were always average, and then the spotlight's on you because now you're in shape, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, this exists too. So it's like, and a lot of people, they want to be average. They don't want to stand out. I just realized that's not me. Because I've embraced my ego. I've embraced it. So it's like, I do want a spotlight on me still. I don't care if I'm introverted. I still want it. So I'm just going to keep on trying. I'm going to keep going. You know, and that's a decision that I made for myself for a lot of different reasons. I'm going to keep going until I'm satisfied, which, you know, I'm going to go much slower next year. I've told you guys. I have a body comp era coming up. And I'll think about a cut after that, and I'll see what I'm going to do, you know, but I don't think I'll ever bulk. I don't think I'm ever going to intentionally gain weight. I think that is just not going to happen. So that's just me. You know, I'm not telling anybody what to do within vanity. Keep in healthy levels. That's all I have to say. As an activist, my only thing that I'm pushing is for you to get to average, for you to not be overweight. So wherever that is for you, that's good enough for me as an activist. Okay? And you do not have to accept being mid-sized. That is BS. And by that I mean being overweight. You don't have to accept it, and it's still unhealthy. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. She's really got me on my soapbox.
Fat fuck. I was such a fatty McFat. I used to do this, I used to do that. I'm like, bro, give yourself 3 bad months, friend. 3 bad months. Those behaviors will be back.
3 bad months, please. More like 3 bad years for me. Like, shut the fuck up. Seriously. I mean, what the fuck? See, now I'm starting to think she wasn't ever fat. It takes a long time, unless you're talking like massive hinge, to get fat from being skinny in 3 months. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Get out of my face. That's what I hear. I'm like, get the fuck out of my face with that shit. That is stupid.
Back.
3 fucking months. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God. 3 months. Please. You guys, I can gain 170 pounds in 3 months. You heard it here. Stupid ass. Honey, I've had so many bad months on this journey. Don't even play with me. Don't even play. You think it's been a cakewalk? No. Life isn't a cakewalk, honey. For anybody. Being fat just makes it even worse. That's the truth. And that is a sad truth, but it's a truth that we all understand by our 30s, I would hope. Unless if we're totally delulu. But you tend to realize that by your 30s. That life is not a cakewalk. You gotta pick your pain. It is what it is. So, and like I said, if I have to be the one, if you are in your 30s and you don't know it, I guess I'm telling you. Because I'm like, what? But I think it is common in your 20s to think like, well, there's some way that I can make this easy. Yeah, go through your Saturn return. That'll die. You'll forget about it.
Matter of fact, give yourself 6 bad months. You might be right where you started.
Oh, okay. So, no, I can actually gain 170 pounds, 160 pounds in 6 months, actually. Okay. Okay. Wow. I think it's amazing that you think I could even afford that. You know how much that would cost? I think it's amazing that you think I could actually somehow make enough money to make that happen. I think it's truly incredible that you think I'd be able to push past the point of fullness for 6 consecutive months when at this rate, because I've taken care of my body, I get full. It grosses me out to overeat. But you think I can just push without an E followed by the letter D when I got out of that? Okay, why would I do that? Can you tell me my motivation? Well, because you can have a bad 6 months. Honey, bye. Honey, bye. You don't think I had bad years while I was doing this? Please. You don't think it was difficult? Please. Please. Now, I will say, during this vanity weight era, hasn't been that hard. I do think this is a privilege. Absolutely. But the rest of it, ooh, honey. Ooh, even a lot of my mid-size era, ooh, honey, it was tough. I was struggling financially, very much so. And certainly in the years prior, certainly 2023 when I was my biggest losing, that was so difficult. I was not happy. Nothing was going well in my life. I felt like a complete loser, and honestly, I was. I was one. It's not because I was fat. That was just something that was added onto the pile of shit that I was going through at the time. That's all. And we need to keep in mind that fatness is not the make or break of any situation. There's a lot of other shit that goes on that can determine how bad of a situation we're in. But fatness is something that was also going badly. And that's okay too. Don't put it on a pedestal, but you can add it to the pile. It does matter. It is a contributing factor to your situation. It does make it worse. That's true. But it's not like if you get thin, all your other problems will be solved. I just took everything systematically wrong with my life, and I worked to reinvent myself and come back from a very low point. And I think I've done pretty well. But that's because I've been doing everything at the same time. Because that's something else you learn. You can do multiple things at once. That's something that I personally learned, But anyways, let's continue.
Now, I think that people have every right to make fun of themselves, every right to speak on experiences that they've had, habits that they've had. I just think that when you make it a public conversation, when you allow yourself to be the butt of a joke for everybody, whether it be in the workplace or on the internet or at the family function, and then you show up 2 years later and you're fat again. This also applies to like a bunch of other things. Like, I try to be really careful about the way that I talk about my addiction with any of my loved ones, because I'm not trying to say I don't have a lot of strength and a lot of discipline. I have so much strength. I have so much discipline. I'm really proud of myself. I also know that I am an addict and there's a certain way that I function, and I know that God might throw me demons or obstacles years down the line that I will have no idea how to stomach. And I hope that I give myself grace in however I choose to stomach those obstacles. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
I get what you're saying. I think it could apply to something like money. I think it could apply to something like looks. I think it could apply to something like addiction. I think it could apply to a lot of different things. But fatness, it's not a mystical thing that just comes out of nowhere. It's like somebody casted a spell on me and all of a sudden I gained all this weight back. Honey, it is a day-by-day decision. Just as it was to lose the weight, it is the same thing. It's not a shock. It's not sudden. It's not surprising. It's not any of those things. It's just not. It just isn't. And it's not something bad happened to me, therefore I have to hinge. That's an E followed by letter D. Which, if you're not out of it, then yeah. But that's the thing. False recovery exists. What does false recovery look like? False recovery within hinge is going through a reductive phase. Which what follows after the reductive phase? The hinge phase. If you're out of it, if you're done, period. You realize how stupid it is. You can't unsee how dumb it is. Once you see how stupid it is, you can't unsee it. Now, those habits can be so deeply ingrained, but you will eventually reach a point where you don't do it anymore because you see how stupid it is. And the wheels, they can't turn as well as they used to. They start to grind. And it's like, oh gosh, this is stupid. And then it doesn't work anymore. Because then you're like, oh, I don't actually feel better because I know what I'm doing and I know this is stupid. So then what incentive do you have to keep going? You can't make yourself believe in it again. It's not the same thing as an addiction because it's not purely chemical or physical. It is a mental illness, which, you know, you can have times where you get better or worse in it, but if you're out of it, if you realize how bad it is or how stupid it is or how any of it is, honey, it's done. You can't go back. You just can't. I told you guys, you need to think of it like a cult. If you don't believe in it anymore, you can't just go back to it. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't, because you could try, but it won't be the same because you know you don't need it. The people that struggle to get out is because you feel like you're going to die if you leave. But once you've left and you've seen that you didn't die and you just screamed, I told you guys, I had times where it's like I'd scream or I'd howl at the moon and shit. You know? I had some tortured era moments of like screaming at the moon or howling at the moon, like in the prophecy. Which I know I have to be a cheesy Swiftie, but I'm just saying, I've howled at the moon before because I was just so anxious without this coping mechanism. But then the howling ended and then it was over. And then I was like, oh, I'm alive. And it's like, you can't go back. It's just not the same. Because I, you know, and for me, I had to be that strict because I waited too long. I was so unhealthy by the time I got out of the toxic ritualistic that I could not slip up. It was like, no, you're done. You're never doing this again. It's cooked. You know, I had done all the prior work to getting out. I had worked on so many different triggers throughout the years prior. So I could deal. And I was just like, I have to just deal, period. It's sink or swim. If I don't do this now, I'm going to die. So I had to stop. And I did. And you just have to face the fear. It's a fear-based thing. You have to face it. But what false recovery can look like is, oh, I'm losing. Oh, but now I'm gaining. Oh, but I'm losing. Oh, but now I'm gaining. Oh, God. That's not actually out of it. Because that's not healthy. And the toxic ritualistic doesn't care about health. So if you don't care enough about your health, then you're still in it, period. Because living in reality is understanding that fatness, even at low levels, is really fucking bad for you. It's really bad for your body. So when you do the work to lose the weight, you're not going to regain it. Because you know that it's really bad for you to be in that state. And it is bad to weight cycle as well. So the only way that you can do that is if you throw caution to the wind, which why would you throw caution to the wind? Because you're still in the TR. You're still in it. You don't care. You care more about the cycle. You care more about the ritual than you care about your health. You don't care about yourself. You care about the ritual. You care about the coping mechanism, which guess what? That means that you're not fucking recovered. You're not. It means it's a false recovery. I've been a false recovered person. 2019 Alex, I was false recovery. Personified. And guess what? COVID came, all my dreams shattered, and that fake recovery was gone in an instant because it wasn't real. But guess what? So much shit has happened since 2021. Just holy fuck. And I've been fine. And how did I know I was out of it for sure? I tell you guys all the time because I got dumped and I was devastated by it. It was my worst fear to be single and 30. I know that doesn't matter to a lot of people, but it mattered to me. And it happened. My worst nightmare. All my plans in my life were built around that man. And it was gone. And I was devastated. But guess what? I kept going. Because my health didn't give a fuck if I was dumped. My health didn't care if I was financially stressed. My health didn't care if I was happy or not about what happens in the world. My health didn't care about, I don't fucking know, whatever else. The way I could twist my political or religious beliefs to fit my toxic ritualistic narrative. My health doesn't give a fuck about any of that. My health didn't care about if I was getting along with everyone or not. My health didn't care about if I had status or not. None of that shit mattered. My health didn't care about superficiality. It doesn't matter. You know? So it's like you realize that. And if you're not in the toxic ritualistic, you finally can see something bad happening to me has no connection to my eating behavior. Because that is the problem in a nutshell. Why do you think that something bad happening or having a bad time means that you have to change how you're eating? That is disordered. That is a mental illness. There's something wrong with you if you believe that. That's wrong. And I will tell you that's wrong. Because, honey, I've had tons of stuff happen that I was not happy about since 2022. And I mean, personally, oh my gosh, it's been hard. Financially, oh my fucking God. You gotta be fucking kidding me. A generalized sense of hopelessness. Oh my God. I chose one of the craziest times. I told you guys I've chosen one of the craziest times in the world to do this, but it doesn't fucking matter. Your body doesn't give a fuck. Your health doesn't give a fuck if it's a good time or not. Now, I will say, the vanity weight era, it does require a bit of a good time. I'm going to be real about that. But that's just because it's a lot harder on a physical level, and it's not technically necessary. But honey, your health is necessary, period. So just, okay, let's continue.
Sometimes I'm like, bro, like you're talking about your fat self like she killed someone. She was just fat. I don't know. You were just fat. Oh my God. Oh my God, you really liked food. Oh no! It's kind of like saying, but that would never happen to me. And Queen, it could. And it might. And that...
Well, it's always funny because a lot of times they don't have that mindset when it comes to weight loss. They're like, that could never happen to me. And it's like, it could. But that's always okay. Like if you were to tell her, I could never actually lose, she'd be like, okay. But if you tell her, I could never regain, she's like, You see, it's always that one way. Everything always slants that way. It's like they're biased. They're not real.
That'll be okay. Like, there were things, I have literally spoken struggles into existence. I have manifested struggles for myself by saying, but that would never happen to me. And going about my life like it would never happen to me.
Look at this superstitious chain email logic for my millennials, for my Gen Zs. If you scroll past this TikTok, you'll have bad luck. Okay? That's the kind of logic we're getting into here. It's very, very superstitious. This is very mystical. This is brujeria moment. Which, no, honey. That doesn't apply to weight. It doesn't. The food must go into the mouth on a consistent basis to gain the weight. And plenty of food, too. Not a little bit of food, a lot of food. It's not mystical. It's not, oh, that'll never happen to me, honey. The whole reason why this is a toxic ritualistic thing is because it's in your fucking control. Shut the fuck up. That's why. This isn't like other stuff that isn't in your control. You control what goes in your mouth. That's the whole fucking point. How the fuck could you... Sorry, I need to stop cussing. How could you use this as a coping mechanism if you didn't have control over it? Think about it. Does it make sense? Doesn't make sense to me.
As if I'm so special that it would never happen to me. Funny. Just food for thought.
Gaining weight doesn't happen to you. It doesn't. There can be complicated situations. Maybe you're on a medication or something. But if a medication is making you gain massive amounts of weight, you might want to consider not being on that. Because at a certain point, it's not going to be helpful. Again, if we're talking vanity weight or something, that's a bit different. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about gaining massive amounts of weight. But that's the only thing. But even that, it's typically temporary, or it wouldn't need to stay that way forever. It just wouldn't. And it's explainable. And if you don't have the TR, then you'd lose it after you didn't need it anymore. Because you'd be like, well, it happened for this time because I was going through something or whatever. But now I'm off that medication, so I can take care of it now. You know. But that's just thinking about it logically. And again, the food still has to go in the mouth. 1 second, I have to cough. Gosh, she's driving me nuts.
When people lose a lot of...
That was the gross ending. Okay, so I'm done. I just shot my vocal cords. She made me that mad. So, we're going to go. Again, I'm introverted and I tried to be an extrovert for a second. You can see I was immediately shut down. But I will talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. Peace.